Linares 1993, a dusty Spanish town becomes the stage for an eternal duel. On one side, Anatoly Karpov, the surgeon of silence, master of precision. On the other, Garry Kasparov, the storm incarnate, unrelenting and brilliant. This is not just a game, it's a war of philosophies. And in the same-ish variation of the King's Indian, they begin to write one of the boldest queenless middle games chess has ever seen. Karpov opens with 1d4, a classical and flexible start. He's aiming to build a solid central presence. Had he chosen 1e4 instead, the game might have shifted toward open tactical battles, something Kasparov thrives in. By playing 1d4, Karpov sends a message, let's play my kind of game. Kasparov responds classically with nf6, not committing yet. He's flexible, ready for King's Indian, Grunfeld or Nimzo. It's psychological warfare already. He's telling Karpov, I'm ready for anything. A firm grip on the center. If Karpov played nf3, it would have kept options open, but c4 shows he's ready to claim space and keep the initiative. Now Kasparov chooses the King's Indian defense. An invitation to battle. This line leads to asymmetry, complex mid-games. He's steering away from stereo equality. Development continues. White builds the center with nc3. Black fiancos with bg7. Had Kasparov played d5 here, we'd be in Grunfeld territory. More forcing, but less of the deep positional fight Kasparov wanted today. White now dominates the center with pawns on d4, c4, and e4. Black responds with a flexible d6. Why not d5? Because Kasparov wants dynamic counterplay, not symmetry. This signals the same-ish variation. It's defensive and aggressive. f3 supports e4, but slightly weakens the dark squares and delays development. If Karpov had castled or played be2, the game would be calmer. Kasparov castles into what might become a storm. That's confidence. If he had delayed castling and played c5 or a6, it might have given Karpov too much initiative. be3 from Kopra fortifies the center. e5 from Kasparov is a classic strike. It challenges the e4-d4 structure and sets up for a possible f5 pawn thrust later. A modest development move, keeping the option to bring the knight to g3. Had Karpov play nh3 aiming for nf2 g4, it would have been more active, but less solid. Kasparov plays c6, prepares b5. It's a waiting move, but also a framework builder. Kasparov is getting ready to launch on the queen side. White connects rooks and prepares long castling by moving queen to d2. Black's knight moves d7, supports e5 and opens options like nc5 or b5. Karpov centralizes while moving rook to d1, perhaps to support d4 if it's challenged later. Quiet but purposeful. Now the queenside play is official. Black plays a6 considering b5 is coming. Kasparov shows that his strategy will be to undermine from the flank. dx e5. This captures tension early. Some argue that holding the center longer might have forced Black to show his hand first, but Karpov wants clarity. And xe5, Kasparov keeps his structure healthy and centralizes a piece. Taking with a pawn would have weakened d6. White moves b3. Karpov solidifies c4 and prepares bb2. Had he played g4, h4 to start kingside expansion, the game would have spiraled into wild territory. But that's not Karpov's style. Black plays b5. Queenside play begins. Kasparov is walking the classic Kayagli path and push on the flank while White controls the center. 12, cx b5, ax b5, pawn exchanges open lines. The a file might become vital later. White gave up some central control for this. qx d6. A bold queen trade-off. Karpov wants to reduce tactics and play to his positional strengths. Black plays nfd7. Kasparov declines. He doesn't want to trade just yet. His knight repositions for future aggression. If he had accepted, the position would flatten. White plays f4. Karpov tries to open the king side, knowing the center is locked. If he had played gg3 and bg2 instead, he could have waited for Black's plan. But he's showing intent now. b4 Kasparov pushes. The queen side storm gains momentum. He wants to bury the knight on c3. White moves knight to d1. Retreat but not defeat. This knight is reround to d2 or c1, then to more meaningful squares. Playing e4 instead would allow b3 and c3 ideas too quickly. Kasparov plays knight to g4. Here's where the game's electric. This knight move pressures e3, f2 and prepares tactics. Karpov plays bd4, calmly placing his bishop on a central diagonal, watching over e5 and f6 and adding tension to the queen side. But wait, why this move now? Karpov could have first addressed the loose pawn on b3 or the awkward knight on b1. Instead, he goes for positional control. Glenn perhaps underestimating Kasparov's hunger for chaos. What if he had played nc1 or g3 instead? It might have kept things more stable, but it would also be passive. And Karpov knew that against Kasparov, passivity invites destruction. So he walks the fine line. Maintain control, but don't provoke the beast. Kasparov immediately captures. It seems simple. Exchange the dark square bishops. But there's more to it. By removing the bishop from e3, he opens up the possibility of swigging his rook, specifically the a8 rook, into action. Karpov recaptures with the queen, placing her directly on d4. Seemingly central, but now sitting in the line of fire. Did he sense what was coming? And then thunder strikes. Kasparov plays arcs a2, a jaw-dropping exchange sacrifice. He gives up a full rook for what? There's no immediate checkmate, no blunder, no fork. Just pure positional genius. He doesn't want the rook, he wants the initiative. By removing the a2 pawn, Kasparov clears that for his queenside pawns to advance. Karpov reacts, not on the queen side, but on the king side. He tries to kick the g4 knight with h3. This seems slow, but it's necessary. If he'd taken the rook with rack a2, now black's compensation becomes more vivid. c5, q4 plus nx e4. All are lurking. Taking the rook outright leads to suffering. Karpov senses danger but still tries to maintain control. Kasparov strikes with c5 like a whip. This does three things: gains space on the queen side, challenges white's queen position, prepares c4, and further pawn storms. Karpov pulls back his queen, a full retreat from the center to the back rank. This is a signal he's on the defensive now. Maybe he was hoping to stabilize and regroup, but qg1 feels like a reluctant retreat. Had he tried qd3 or qd3, he'd maintain more central control, but also open a more tactical risk. Kasparov's pressure is starting to suffocate. Kasparov coolly repositions his knight from g4 to f6, bringing it back into the battle. Notice how he doesn't rush. He's up material in spirit, even if down in points. No movement did not. Both knights for domination, especially eyeing the e4 square. Karpov attempts a break in the center. Striking with e5, it's bold. He's trying to fight back and clear space. If he had played g4 instead, he'd be chasing pieces but weakening his own king. So e5 makes sense. Try to push the knight and reclaim central control. But Kasparov has it all under control. The knight jumps to e4, a beautiful outpost. Now the knight is untouchable. If white tries fx e4, Kasparov's queen springs into life via h4 or f6, and white's king is too exposed to survive the avalanche. This knight is more than a piece. It's an anchor of Kasparov's entire attack. h4, another attempt by Karpov to breathe, pushing the h-pawn, gaining space, trying to prepare h5 or trap a piece. But it's too late. He's now pushing pawns without coordination. His pieces are still stuck, especially the knight on b1, which has yet to see daylight. Kasparov keeps marching. The c4 pawn is a spear tearing into white's territory. It fixes white's structure, threatens c3, and cuts off counterplay. This is the power of past pawns, not in their promotion, but in how they distract and distort the enemy's resources. The e2 knight finally awakens, but now it's too cramped. Karpov brings it to c1, preparing to recapture on a2 or defend the queen side, but it's a slow march. The knight's journey is 2 moves behind the battle. Kasparov pushes forward. The pawn reaches c3, becoming a nightmare for white. It's not just a pawn. It's a landmine. Capture it and you lose time. Ignore it and it becomes a queen. Karpov moves knight to a2, finally captures the rook. But it's almost irrelevant now. The damage is done. Black's pawn on c3 is a criminal with a free pass. Kasparov responds immediately, pushing the pawn to c2, and now the threat is real. 1 square away from queening. The board is tilted. Karpov's king is stuck in the center, his rook undeveloped, and Kasparov's momentum is unstoppable. qd4. Karpov desperately tries to exchange queens. Again, this is his only hope: simplify and hope for a fortress. But Kasparov has no time for diplomacy. He queens the pawn with check. It's not just promotion, it's domination. Glended, white must respond immediately and now faces a fully armed black queen on the board. 25k xd1 ndc5, centralizing the knight, covering key squares, coordinating for the final assault. Now white's pieces are in complete disarray. After Pov captures Kasparov's queen on d8, Kasparov responds instantly with rook capturing Karpov's queen, a check that does much more than just reclaim material. The check forces Karpov's king to make a decision. With almost no good squares to go to, Kasparov's rook now dominates the open d file, exerting full control over central and queenside activity. This isn't just a recapture, it's a positional hammer blow. Karpov's remaining pieces are either awkward or passive. The white king is about to become a spectator in his own defeat. Karpov plays kc2, the only realistic square to move to undercheck. Going to e2 would be suicidal. It would walk straight in g3 forks and rook pins down the file. Going to c1 is technically possible but achieves nothing. It parks the king even deeper into the corner, allowing black's pieces to storm in freely. By choosing kc2, Karpov aims to stay as close to the center as possible, maybe dreaming of coordinating his remaining rook and knight. But unfortunately, Kasparov is already 10 steps ahead. This move, though forced, leaves the white king vulnerable on an open board, and Kasparov knows how to exploit it immediately. And now, a silent killer. Kasparov plays nf2. It looks quiet on the surface, but beneath that calm lies pure domination. This knight is perfectly posted. It cuts the board in half, denying the white king safe passage to the king side. It restricts white's knight, which can't find an outpost without being harassed or traded unfavorably. It even prepares future tactics like nd1 plus or ng4, should Karpov try anything risky. Think of this move as Kasparov placing a dagger into Karpov's already crumbling coordination. White's position here isn't just bad, it's hopelessly paralyzed. Black's rook controls the open file. His knight dominates key squares, and white's pieces, they're scattered, defensive, and fearful. Karpov accepted the defeat and resigned, And with that, Kasparov doesn't just win a game, he tells a story of dynamic imbalance, fearless sacrifice, and preparation that borders on prophetic. His decision to sacrifice the rook on a2 was not just tactical, it was psychological warfare. He knew Karpov would hesitate, doubt, and lose momentum. Had Karpov played just a little more actively in the middle game, challenged Kasparov's pawn sooner, or rerouted his knight faster, maybe the story would be different. Not, but that's the poetry of chess. Sometimes it's not about who blunders, but who dares more. In Linares 1993, Kasparov dared more and won. If you felt the intensity of every move. If this battle stirred something inside you, like subscribe and share this story with someone who believes chess is more than a game. It's a legacy.